The title isn't actually clickbait. I have thrown every single game, even technically the ones that I won, since Ranked Deadlock came out about a month ago. And at the time I thought it was for a challenge I was doing, but after looking at the data, it turns out that I pretty much just made my life harder for myself, and I kind of made the days worse for anyone that I actually played with. And if you're like me and you play a really wide hero roster in Ranked, after watching this video, you might want to narrow that roster down by a lot. So what happened? If you have stopped by any of my live streams in the last month or so, you may have noticed that I've been playing under the title All Random Heroes to Eternus. I figured that since I quote unquote love applying these challenges to my stream to make it a little bit more interesting to watch, that would help me grow and most importantly allow me to become even better at the game at a much faster pace, because I won't pigeonhole myself down into one hero and as such get a much deeper game knowledge. But it really just stopped me from getting anywhere altogether. Not only did I end up in a way lower rank than I actually belong in, since I kept being put on absolutely terrible heroes in a game where your draft or hero pick means basically everything, but it's also impacting my ability to improve at the game at this point, because I'm stuck in the most brainless lobbies and the only way to get out is rolling with the punches, which comes at the cost of learning skills or macro, because nobody actually plays the game properly at this rank. And I know this to be true because whenever the matchmaker would throw me into higher lobbies, that being high ascendant or low Eternus, I would do just fine. By playing every single hero in Ranked, I accepted that it would be a lot harder than maining a few. Not only would it require me to have an incredibly strong knowledge of the game on every single hero, and a high flexibility when it comes to micro things such as the position of the crosshair and the perceived field of view swap as you're hopping between heroes, because playing two different heroes feels completely different. But I was also aware that it would be a very difficult challenge, because by playing all random heroes, I would inevitably get non-meta or maybe even bad heroes that have poor win rates. But I was operating under a few assumptions that weren't true. And while I was expecting that I would get bad heroes sometimes, it turns out that I kept getting the bad heroes practically every time. So all we have to do is look at my last week of games to really figure out where the problem lies. You might notice that, wow, there's a lot of pretty crappy heroes in here. But let me tell you, going off these 10 games alone, it's a lot worse than it seems. Also, you might notice that there are 12 games on this report. That's because the last 2 games last week, I just picked the 3 best heroes in my roster and I queued up, and obviously I won those games pretty convincingly, but there's no point in bringing them up since we're focusing on a wider hero roster in this video. So those 2 aren't really related to the data at all. So out of these 10 games, we had 1 Warden game, 1 Abrams game, 2 Great Talon games, 1 McGinnis game, 1 Mirage game, and 2 Infernus games, 1 Vindicta game, and 1 Game on 7. And why is this crazy? Because by just looking at this list, it doesn't seem all that bad. It just looks like a skill issue, right? But out of the 22 heroes in the game, there are 9 heroes with an overall win rate above 50%. In Eternus and Ascendant lobbies, there are 10 heroes with an overall win rate above 50. And I normally consider the cutoff whether a hero is considered good or bad when comparing stats, as long as they have above over 50 or sub 50% of a win rate. So that means a little less than a half of the heroes in the game are pretty solid or good, and then a little more than a half are worse than that. Then obviously there's going to be outliers at the top and the bottom. And realistically, if the wide roster where you select every hero was truly random, then this would mean that you would get a good hero every other game or so, to the tune of about 40 to 50% of your games. But what if I told you that after looking at this data, I realized that not only did I not get that, but it's actually way worse than I thought. First, out of these 10 games, I only got to play a good hero in 2 of them. In the other 80% of the games, I had to play a hero with less than a 50% win rate overall. Not only that, but I also had to play Infernus and Great Talon twice each. Both of these heroes are the 2 worst heroes in the game. And now you might say, wow, obviously you're gonna get the heroes with the lowest pick rate because you keep choosing all the heroes, so I'll give you the worst ones, the least pick rate. But Infernus throws a spanner in the works when it comes to this theory, because Infernus at the moment is the second most picked hero in the game at about 75% pick rate, not only in pubs, but in Eternus lobbies, Ascendant lobbies, and even Phantom lobbies. And as you go down the rank, usually his pick rate even goes up. Now, I did still queue up into every single hero, and I was expecting to be put onto heroes that I don't want a lot of the time. I don't even want some of the heroes in the top 50%. If I could choose all the heroes that I would want to play, I would probably choose like 3 or 4 of them. But I was expecting that. But I wasn't expecting the matchmaker to give me a bad hero almost every game. And I wasn't expecting it to seemingly actively avoid giving me a good hero statistically ever. And that's a lesson that I can learn from this, and you, the dear watcher, can learn from it as well. Don't play a wide range of heroes if you want to climb. But the system is clearly broken, or at the very least underdeveloped. When you pick every single hero, odds are you might think like me and assume that this means that you will get to play every hero more or less the same amount of games. But as we can see from the data, this is far from the truth, and if anything, the current ranked queue is completely counterintuitive to what you would expect when filling as every hero. So if we look across into the other modes or other queues, and we don't even have to look that far, we can just look at the new edition of Hero Labs, there's actually something called a pity system built into the matchmaker. And that's something I was hoping to see, and at this point I am hoping to see in the future of Deadlock's matchmaking. For those who don't know, I'm borrowing the term from gacha games, where every time you miss a roll for that sweet anime girl that you want, you have a higher chance of getting the items you didn't roll in the next one. Eventually, over a time, it becomes a near guarantee. In Hero Labs, everyone wants to play the experimental heroes, and the developers either foresaw this or added afterwards. But there is pity matchmaking in Hero Labs. In Hero Labs, you can only select one experimental hero at a time, but if you don't get the pick you wanted when you queue up, then it is substantially more likely that you get it in the next game. When applying this to a game's general matchmaking, this would mean that if I select every single hero or have a very wide roster, every time that I queue into the game, this would make the chance of me rolling onto that same hero next time lower. Eventually, that would mean that the high pick rate or win rate heroes would end up being the only ones I didn't get to play, which also means that I would have a higher chance in getting to play them. But since this doesn't exist, my current hypothesis is that by queuing up into a lot of heroes, the game is more likely to give you those with a lower win rate. I don't think it's related to pick rate at all, and for some reason, the only common link is the heroes having a very low win rate, but maybe there's something else going on beneath the hood that I can't see yet. Now, there supposedly is some type of hero-specific matchmaking in the mix, or was at one point, which might also mean that everyone's experience is different, and it might just depend on your own personal win rates and stats rather than the overall hero stats across the whole game. But stats are stats, and if you have an equal skill on every hero, then your stats are likely to reflect that of the rest of the game's community. Now, I'm gonna be away from DreamHack Stockholm for most of this week of Ranked coming up, and by the way, if anyone is going or planning on going or knows somebody who's going to DreamHack, make sure to use code ottr for 15% off the tickets. I am also going to be streaming there at least once, so you can stop by and say hi, but I decided to completely abstain from Ranked until I get back next week. I might not even play Ranked until the next reset comes along, but once I do get back, I am planning to put my hypothesis to the test. I'm going to be queuing up with the 2 highest win rate heroes, and then pick the lowest possible win rate one at the time, and then just kind of see what happens. Depending on the results, we'll have some ideas of how the matchmaking works as it pertains to high win rate or low win rate heroes. We could also throw some Infernus or Infernus adjacent heroes into the mix as a third pick as well, that being one with a very low win rate, not necessarily the lowest, but still a very high pick rate, and just kind of see what happens. It's also worth noting that if we get a hero draft in the upcoming patch, then the entire challenge is kind of moot anyways, but assuming that there isn't any type of pity system built into the matchmaker already, I still think it will be a great addition for the normal public playlist as well. So the casual player who doesn't know what to play keeps getting put onto the worst heroes in the game and ends up having a horrible time before inevitably uninstalling. If we get a draft or see meaningful matchmaking changes that address this issue, then the problem is solved. But that doesn't mean that the last 4 weeks of me toiling through a horrible ranked experience wasn't for nothing, since I finally may have figured out why it has been so terrible, or at the very least, we finally have found a trail. I'm gonna try to keep you guys updated when I have something more substantial, but I am curious to hear what you guys think about it, and if anyone else has discovered the same issues with ranked or wide hero rosters. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see y'all next time. Peace out.